Today we're going to be tying the ever so popular red Patriot Parachute Fly. It's a great attractor fly for the summertime. We're going to be tying it in size 16 today. So I already have the hook and the vise, and I'll start my thread right behind the eye. I'll take some wraps rearward. And that was approximately probably 4 or 5 wraps of thread behind the eye. I want to end with my thread about an eye length behind the eye. That's going to be where we tie in the parachute. I have a length of Parapost here in light gray. And what I do is I take it in my left hand and I split it with my scissors and then run it up the thread, or sorry, up the parachute post. So I'm left with 2 sections. Now for sizes 16 and below, 16, 18, 20, I use that half length. For 14 and above, I'll use a full. So now that I have the material in my fingers here, about halfway through, I'm going to take one loose wrap, pull, another wrap, pull, and then now I can just pull that up, and if I have to move it, I can move it. Just back the thread off, the tension off, and move it. But that's about where I want it to be. So I'll take a wrap rear, wrap ahead, behind, and then I'll start to wrap around the post. And I'm making fairly tight wraps, but as I start going up, I loosen up till I get about there, and then I'll grab the parachute and give it a little snug pull with the thread. Take a couple more wraps, and that'll happen. I just pulled too tight. I just keep tension on it, just like that. What happens there is I wrapped too high with not enough tension, pulled to one side, and it unraveled. So we redo it. I got a good base started. I wrap up, loosening up tension, back down, adding tension. Now that's pretty snug there. So I'll lift up on the parachute post, trim it off, then move my thread rearward to where I want to tie in the tail. And a good tie-in point, good rule of thumb, is just where the barb starts to jut up is where I want to end with that thread. This is where I want to begin the tail. So I have a feather here for my saddle. You can see I already preened all the barbels out so they're standing straight. So I'll just take some in my left hand, keeping the tips aligned, and I stripped them out. So now the tips are pretty well uniform, and I'm going to tie that in right here. Now I just got done with an order of probably close to 3,000 of these, so I got pretty accurate as far as the tail goes. But if you want to measure so the tips reach the bend of the hook and the tie-in point is in your hand, and I just transfer that. That measurement will go right here. Take one loose wrap, tighter wrap, and then I can continue towards the parachute post right there. Now if there's butts sticking out behind the parachute post, you can trim those out. Or if there's not enough, just continue that taper with a thread. Just so happened that this section of the tail fiber, or the barbels are about the perfect length. So right here on my side of the hook shank, I'm going to tie in my crystal flash. And what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that not too much of the crystal flash can be shown through that thread. The nicest body here is going to help you out in the next step as far as laying down the crystal flash. So I ended with my thread at the initial tie-in point. I will take the thread and advance it now to the hook point, and then that is going to be covered up with touching wraps of the crystal flash. And take your time. The more time you take, the better it'll be. So now that I have the crystal flash here, I'll capture it with my thread on my side of the hook, and then I'll take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'll put a nice red spot right in the middle. This is personal preference. Some people like the hot spot, the thread spot to be shorter, some longer. This is a good balance, because what I'll do now is I'll have an pretty much equal distribution of crystal flash, thread, and then crystal flash behind the parachute. So I just basically captured the crystal flash with my thread. I'll pull the crystal flash out of the way and up, and then advance the thread forward to just behind the parachute. And you'll see the crystal flash just kind of hanging there. So then I can continue making wraps. The crystal flash ending there. Capture it once again, 1, 2, 3 wraps. And then I'll turn it up to trim the crystal flash out. This will ensure that you do not cut your thread, which I have done the hard way when I first started tying. So now that we have the thread there, I'll grab my Hackle, which is a brown Hackle. I stripped some fibers out, so I'll tie that in vertically ahead. So I just captured that with my thread. And in this case, since I want my Hackle to kind of cup upwards, which is personal preference, I tie it in with the cup facing the right. So now that I'm holding this with my thread, I'll begin making wraps up the parachute. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 down. Now, what I'll do is build the head of the fly, because I'm actually going to whip finish around the post, just like that. So I take my thread behind the post, around it, and I leave it hanging around the hook shank on my side. So now that's all that's left to do, is grab the Hackle and begin turning it around the parachute post. 1, 2, 3 turns. And I'm pulling that relatively tight. It makes the Hackle flare out real nice. So I hold it with my left hand, and I take my thread between the Hackle and the stem, just like that. 1, 2, and now that's captured. So once again, turn it on its side, thread hanging down. I reach in and just trim out the Hackle. Here comes the probably the hardest part of the fly, is actually whip finishing around the parapost. So I'll try to get my thread under the Hackle. 1, 2, 3, 4 turn whip finish, and I just push down with my whip finisher, and then I pull around the base, and now my thread is tied. All that's left to do is trim it out, and trim out any Hackle fibers, which it looks like I trapped 2 or 3 right there, if you can see that, which is no big deal. I'll turn it up like this, and just trim out the thread and the hackle fiber. So I'm just kind of fluffing up the parachute post there. As you can see, it gives it a nice clean look. It's not supposed to be a real big bodied attractor. It's just a thread body, so you'll go through some thread. Anyway, it's a great summertime attractor pattern for brookies, browns, rainbows, even panfish if you want to go that route. So anyway, visit J. Nicholl Fly Fishing online or subscribe to the YouTube channel and learn how to tie some more bugs. So thanks for watching.